Hello, my name is Omar Rampersad. It is May 27, 2018 at 4:22 p.m. in Toronto. So I posted some tweets today, and those are mine. They're all mine. And I also had a video posted on the day of my brother's funeral talking about um, being targeted um, during the funeral procedure process. So I am being harassed, as I said before, in the building. And there is a comment that I keep hearing that's being made by patrons in the loading dock yesterday, especially by some movers, a group of people, Chinese, Japanese. They were moving in, and they were talking loudly. So they were talking about it's absolute that she is a prostitute. It's absoluted, and monitors names, people like Jim. These are names that I hear: Jim, um, Stan, all these people, and some members of my family and my brother who passed away. These people held trials and found me guilty based of whatever acts that I was suspected of. So enough information is being brought in front of these people, like my brother, who was a judge, I heard, and he found me guilty of being a prostitute. I heard this, my brother, who's dead now. Um, and because of that, then disciplining would be put in place. And people would ask for things like having me lasered, tasered as I sleep, gerbiled, um, being sold to black men, Chinese men, Indian men, passing it around. So this is something also that was talked about in the funeral program, in the funeral home, as the program was being carried out. So there is a comment that I want to make about something being absoluted without the victim's voice being heard. Obviously, what is going on is taking advantage of a loophole in the system, using the Mental Health Act to defame me and to paint me as a prostitute. And of course, the end result of this would also be to physically sell me. So right now, at this point, from the harassing comments I get and the criminal harassment I get everywhere I go, um, I'm being painted as a prostitute. It's absoluted, given affidavits of people saying I solicited them. I slept with multiple men who, of course, are lying. Solicitation, of course, are lies. These are all deliberate scenarios that are taken out of real life happenings, but twisted and painted in such a way to make it um, look like whatever is being reported on is true. So, of course, it's understood because it's a targeting program. It's understood that lies are going to be told. It's understood that things are going to be twisted and perceived in such a way, um, and and uh, reconstructed, real life scenarios reconstructed in such a way to make it look like, for example, that I'm a prostitute, as an example, one of the many things I'm being targeted for based on suspicions purely, of course. So suppression of voice is necessary for this to happen. It's all one-sided, and that's deliberate, which is equal to a conspiracy. So this was my point. If someone were to come to me and say, "We have this information that shows, that proves that you're a prostitute, absolutely a prostitute," and this is done without due processing. This is undermining the legal system that's in place. This is putting in place another system that does not give due process, does not recognize human rights or constitutional rights. And one of the constitutional rights that we have is the right to defend ourselves against any accusations, due process. A voice has to be heard. So I'm being used as an example, uh, to set a precedent that says that if you have enough affidavits and you have enough people coming together and saying that this person is whatever, a murderer, as an example, then we don't need the person's voice anymore, even though the person is around, and information and documents can be served to her to appear in a court. We don't need to do that. We put a third party to represent the person under the Mental Health Act without a diagnosis. And notwithstanding all the evidence that the person is giving on the YouTube and the Twitter account that is contradicting the information that's being presented in these quasi courts that's being held, the trials that's being held in these quasi courts, finding victims and targets guilty or not. Notwithstanding that evidence is available from the target that could be heard in these courts. These courts are going to find you guilty or not based only on the information presented by their witnesses. People are going to testify. Family members are going to testify. Friends are going to testify, and they know that you're targeted. So they also know that if they don't take part in this community targeting program, this vigilantism, they're going to be, or they think they're going to be targeted themselves. The fact is, the people who are running this program is out to make money. It's all money. It's all about money. So if a lot of people are targeted, then obviously more money is made. The end result is to have everybody's name on a list for something or the other. I heard that I'm being used as bait. Bait for what? Well, for sexual predators, pedophiles, rapists, and so on, to come out of the woodworks. That's a very possible thing. It's very possible. So again, the idea is to criminalize everyone, and one way to do that is to use someone as bait and get the criminals to come out of the woodworks and criminalize themselves, and then they could be charged. There's digital information available that the cops will eventually use to criminalize them. So this is one of the many, many ways targets are being used. And of course, at the end of the whole thing, the target is killed off, basically, because by the end of the program, the target will be so compromised, as in my case. I heard I was pussified because a video of me masturbating in my sister-in-law's house and inside of my bedroom, but my doors closed. Had to be a camera in there, obviously. This was released to the public and used to find me guilty in this quasi court, um, as being a prostitute. So masturbation is equal to prostitution in this court. And all these evidence that's gathered is being used in the court, and the person does not have to be given due process. So the end result, as I said, is after all of this, these trials and these experiments, the person that's being experimented on will be so compromised in the public's eyes that the person will want to kill themselves. At least that's what the perpetrators are hoping for. And by the way, making somebody commit suicide is a crime. It's murder, actually, it's manslaughter. Just so the perpetrators out there know that. So if you're conducting these trials and harassing me about it and having monitors stalk me, and you're trying to get me at the end of the whole thing to commit suicide, then you're going to be charged for manslaughter, because there's going to be enough information this YouTube on these YouTube channels with these videos to charge you, the perpetrators, people who are voting, people who are stalking, for manslaughter. If if there are circumstances that can be portrayed that can make it look like a suicide, even if I didn't commit suicide, which I have absolutely no intention to do. This targeting program is giving me so many opportunities to talk about things that's important to me, my human rights issues, like human rights issues, constitutional rights issues, women's issues. There is no way that I would be killing myself anytime soon. However, if I were to die, it would be a direct result of being targeted, and this is manslaughter. So people who are taking part in the program will be charged with manslaughter using my videos, just so you know. What's being done here is murder. It is murder. And I said before in my tweets in the last few days, I suspect that my brother was murdered this way. I suspect that lasers and microwaves were used in his home for several years. He's a target. Like it's being used right here by traffickers, Chinese traffickers, who are training, they're choosing people who live in this building, kids especially, to train them using psychotronic technology, to train them as prostitutes and then sell them remotely and then physically. It's a progressive program, which I'm exposing. So, of course, I'm being heavily targeted. I was targeted this way for a number of years, but I was not aware of it because the program is supposed to be covert and very subtle to start with. And when the traffickers and the programmers think that the programming is in place, so firmly in place, that there's no way that the person will go back, will backtrack. There is no way that the person could revert back to what he or she really is. Then they will make it open. It will be overt, as in my case right now. However, in my case, I meditate. I have a very deep spiritual background. So um, any programming, any any programming that's been done, whether I'm asleep, whether I'm awake, whether I'm walking, talking, whatever, this is not going to work with me because meditation deprograms you, completely and utterly deprogram you. It really doesn't matter what's done to you or who dies or who is murdered or who is whatever. If you have a deep spiritual background and you have an understanding of what how the universe operates, and I'm not saying I know everything, obviously I don't, I'm on a learning curve, but I do have faith in certain things. You will understand that these things have to happen the way they're happening. It has to happen this way. So there is an acceptance, even though there is a lot of pain that's involved. There is pain in life. Life is painful if you intend to survive it. Being in a targeting program makes it even more difficult, of course. However, it also gives you challenges in which you can that you can sharpen your survival skills, psychologically, emotionally, physically, spiritually. So there's opportunities in every challenge that's presented to you. Anyway, so these are my points. Absolute doesn't is not absolute. Absolute means that there is a conspiracy. Will not stand up in a courtroom. If someone is trying to set a precedent, it will not stand up. You'll first have to you'd have to break down the constitutional the Constitution Act itself before you could set a precedent of absolute without the person's voice being heard. And without a formal diagnosis of mental illness, putting somebody in the person's place to talk on behalf of them. In my case, there is no mental illness, so there is no one talking on behalf of me, or should not be anyone talking on behalf of myself. If there are, this is a criminal activity. There is no absolute without my voice. Talk to you another time.